Hello and welcome to Keeping Up With Conspicuous. Today we've got the fantastic Mike Biwer on from Cavallo, and we're going to talk all things distribution, Mike's history, what the company's doing, and what the company's doing really to help, the distribution industry and distribution companies. So welcome, Mike, to the podcast.
Alex, thank you. Thank you for that intro, and glad to be here. And congrats to you guys too. You guys are really killing it in the space. I mean, your podcast is taking off.
Oh, thank you very much. No, well. It only takes off because we get great guests on, and that's why we're here today. And anyone listening, particularly in the distribution space, hopefully Mike has some really good tips about how technology is going to help your business become more profitable, because that's what this is all about, really.
Right.
And that's what we're aiming to do. So yes, let's start, as we always do, with a bit of an intro into Mike and the company, and I guess what you're trying to achieve in the distribution space.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. So I grew up in Grand Rapids, which is where we're based. Cavallo is based in Grand Rapids, and I had a pretty typical upbringing and a pretty linear path early in my career. And I discovered early on that I really needed to be doing things where I felt like I could fall in love with the problem. Mm-hmm. And I also, during that process, found things where there was a problem I could fall in love with and a lot of data. And I didn't know this. I didn't realize this until I was probably 6-8 years into my career, when I started looking at some of the patterns. And I look back now and I say, like, yeah, those patterns are super clear. Where there's a problem worth solving in business, mm-hmm. a lot of data that's sort of under leveraged, bring those two things together. And it's quite a beautiful thing. Mm. And so how that manifests where I landed, and the planets sort of had to align for me to even be here. It was sort of a change in my family's trip in 2018 that allowed me to come at a different time. And I actually had this chance meeting with our founder, who, importantly, for part of the story, was actually a distributor first and foremost. Like, he was in wholesale distribution. You could sort of think of office furniture supplies as sort of the category.
Okay.
And we had this lunch meeting, and he was telling me about how he had just sold his distribution company, and he had also launched a software business. And I was like, well, that's super interesting, because I just finished up another project working for a pretty large company. And he invited me to come out and see the software and take a tour of his warehouse, because he didn't sell 100% of the company. He sold 85% of his company. So he's still on the board. And I got to tell you, it was love at first sight when I saw the software that he built. And he didn't build the software to have a software company. He actually invested in Dynamics Great Plains. Back in the late 90s. He knew when he made that investment that it wouldn't give him everything that he wanted. He had a big vision. And so he invested in humans that could write software for himself.
Yeah.
And then it's the classic great startup story where it delivered insane results for him. And he said, well, if this can do this for me, we can help others as well. And then, like, the focus was on serving distributors running on Great Plains.
Okay. Oh, that is really interesting that he's come from that. The founder actually came from the industry. That's really interesting that it's from, not just a software person, because I guess the great thing about that is he knows the industry really well. And so had he already put in the software into his own businesses then in the distribution space?
He did, yeah. So you can imagine he's got a small development team that's building feature by feature what became SalesPad. Many people in the Microsoft space know the business SalesPad. We rebranded in 2021. But SalesPad was built for GP, but it was really built for him on GP. And I have this saying that I like, which is the ERP is to the business what the operating system is to your smartphone. And so it's super necessary, but it's the apps that make the difference, right? So in a way, he built killer apps for distribution profitability. And the thing that I realized, Alex, coming in was I'd been in supply chain. I had done many ERP installations over my career, but I wouldn't have called myself a distribution expert. I still wouldn't. But when I got here, one of my goals is always to become like that level 5 master in whatever I'm doing. Like I want to have mastery over the thing that I'm doing. And so I'm doing all the research and things I can do. And I found a number of books. One was written by a guy that we've become sort of friends with, Dr. Albert Bates. He's kind of considered the guru of distribution profitability. And he wrote a really cool book. It's not very long. It's really, really insightful. But it felt like what Pete, our owner, had built with technology. The other thing I learned about the space was that this is over $10 trillion in sales on an annual basis in this economy in the U.S.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you just look around and see the physical products in your space, like it all went through distribution.
Yeah.
So it's this giant part of the economy. There are 330,000 distributors in the U.S. alone. So it's this really big space. But what the research would suggest is that so many distributors struggle to make money. The research would suggest that the average distributor is making less than a nickel for every dollar of revenue of pre-tax profit. So It's a lot of work for a little bit of profit. It's quite impressive, really, when you look at it. But the profitability is low. And so, sort of bring it full circle with our founder, he built software that allowed him to deliver results that were literally 10 times industry averages for pre-tax profit and for return on assets. And when he finished, before he sold, he was working like half time. So it's like make more money, work less hard in a very, very meaningful way, and then take that out to the world and let others use and benefit from what he built.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, that's about that. Wow. That's amazing that he's able to do that, because I think a lot of people, 99% of people would have got stuck in that space when they go, well, this is how it is. I make a little bit of profit. That's fine. And whereas I guess he's thought outside the box and gone, actually, technology is a great tool here. I could probably make this a lot easier for myself and for everyone else, and bring the profit back in.
You actually said it too. It's like many of these businesses get started and things start to roll, and then every day becomes fighting fires, and you sort of can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen to everybody, right? Some people are able to sort of figure it out and grow beyond it and invest in different things, but many suffer from that same issue.
Yeah, you get stuck in it, don't you? You think, oh well, this is how it is. This is how this is how my business works. This is how the industry works. And I think you probably almost need to hear it from outside quite a lot, don't you? And say, actually, there are other options. It doesn't have to be this way. Here's some examples of improvements we can make with software. And there might be something we do with processes as well to make your company more profitable, not necessarily meaning you're going to lose a lot of time either. You're going to gain time and gain a bit of profit. So that's great.
That's actually a good point, because I think a lot of people think, I could make more, I could do better, but I'd have to work a lot harder. Actually not the answer. You could actually make a lot more, do better, and work less hard, so to speak, to put it bluntly.
It's taking that step back, isn't it? I think a lot of business leaders struggle because they're busy, which I get, and they're busy in their work lives and they've probably got a lot of stuff going on at home and personally, and then they probably think, oh well, this is the way it works. What's that old analogy, where you see where you have someone pulling a cart and it's got 2 square wheels, and then someone holding a round wheel and saying, it doesn't have to be this way. There is an easy way. You don't have to work harder.
Right.
It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
That's right.
And that's great. And I know we're going to talk a lot in this episode about kind of what the software does. And I guess what we really interested is to relate it back to maybe, if we can, but depending on how much knowledge you've got, perhaps the original software, version 1, as it were, I suppose.
Yeah.
And what he initially did that worked so well to, like you say, that 10 times growth is really interesting, to make him 10 times more competitive than another distributor.
Yeah, we call that our first wave. That first wave was the technology on top of GP. And so that wave for our founder was he invested in GP. And so those of you who know GP know that, say, things like order entry aren't very good. Like it's a really good platform, but things like order entry aren't very good. So we built a phenomenal order entry interface, and many of our customers use it every day. We've got we've got let's say 20,000 monthly active users using the software. But what he would say, and we've talked about this a lot, is that the way to make a lot more money in distribution is actually to be in command of every profit variable inside of every order. So I'll sort of say that again, like every line, meaning everything that the customer's buying, being in command of every line in every order every time is incredibly powerful, but you can only do it with technology, right? Because many of these businesses on the small side, they might have tens of thousands of orders. A medium business might have hundreds of thousands of orders. A larger business may have millions of orders. You cannot do that. When you think about like every order's got, let's say 50 data points inside, just one order.
Yeah.
Every order's going through multiple touch points and every order's got multiple lines to it. We calculate this, right? It's been like 1 billion data points over the course of a year for a smallish business.
Wow.
And so what Pete, our founder, found was that he became, using business rules logic, the technology that he built, in command of every line and every order every time. And then he had all this signal from all this data that's happening throughout the year to drive complete, profitability every single day. And he knew. So when we were first talking about this, Alex, I actually said to him, so if we think about every order having sort of theoretical margin potential in it, now I'm starting to get in sort of the math or the science part of it, right? Like every order has theoretical margin potential in it. And wouldn't it make sense to try to maximize that, right? It seems kind of obvious. Well, how do you do that? Well, he sort of cracked the code in that regard. And I asked him when I started, I said, before you built SalesPad, out of every 100 orders, how many do you think had a profit defect of some sort, something that was draining profit? And he got passionate. He said, oh, easily 35 to 40%. I was like, really?
Wow.
Like that's 45,000 orders over the course of a year for his business that had some form of a profit defect. The most obvious, which may seem simple to fix, would be that you've got 1,000 SKUs. They've all got different prices. And your sales team has some flexibility or freedom to change those prices. And maybe they're doing so more than you would like, more than they need to. And so you build a system to catch that, to put guardrails around it. Where before he did that, we sort of referred to it as a Plinko board. It's like you knew how many orders were coming in. You knew how many shipments were going out. You had no idea what was happening in between. And that's where you're leaking a lot of money. And so when I do the math on, okay, you had 45,000 orders with a defect. Let's just sort of put a cost on those.
Yeah.
That is the difference between average and great. And so that's a big part of it is having the business rules, the logic, the automation to make sure that every order is moving through the system the way that you want and landing in that high margin slot, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, exactly. I saw there was I think that's one of your tools, isn't it, that you sell? Is it the profit? I can't remember what it's called on your website. But
we have a product that's on the SalesPad side. It's basically what we call Sales Monitor and our workflow automation agent. On the cloud side, we call it Mission Control.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Sort of like a GPS on every order, guiding it through the system.
Yeah. I saw the promo video on that. Actually looked amazing as well. So I would definitely recommend anyone who's on Cavallo's website to check out some of the products and the associated videos on YouTube, because they're really well put together and actually really educational about what they're trying to achieve as well. So if you're
thank you for that. My marketing team gets 100% of the credit.
Well, they were very good. So no, I think it was brilliant. And so, I mean, another interesting thing, I guess, on the back of that, you mentioned it started in GP, and we are moving potentially out of GP a bit. I know everyone's been talking about end of life and things like that. I mean, what are you seeing with your customers that have they got quite bespoke systems in GP and they're concerned about moving to Business Central? What are you finding at the moment that your customers are saying to you about that?
Man, it's such a good question. I wish I knew all the answers. Obviously, Microsoft has intentions, right, to move people from GP into Business Central. And I think many will do that. I don't know what percentage, but many will do that. I've heard some wild stats from some that suggest that it's a lower number than I would have expected. For every 100 companies on GP, what number will actually move to Business Central? or you might say, or F&O,
Yeah.
FNSCM, their enterprise ERP.
Yeah.
We have some customers that have gotten quite large and are actually moving from GP to F&O.
Okay.
A lot of customers have a lot of custom. I don't know anybody that actually woke up and said, I can't wait to like replace my ERP system. It's not something that people look forward to doing, I suppose, unless you're in great pain, and that's like the only solution you might look forward to it. But
yeah, you might wake up having had a nightmare of thinking about it. Think,
that's right.
no, I've got to go through that again.
That's right, exactly right. But I guess if you have to do it, you have to do it. Like things don't last forever, so you're going to do that. And back to my analogy around the ERP to the business, I sort of look at it and say, well, ERPs became quite prevalent in, say, the 90s, right? So now we're in the 4th decade of ERP, and I have fondness for the ERP. Like, it's really important, but it wasn't built and designed to like maximize profitability. Like, we're all about profit maximization, and I would say if it were designed to do that, it would have solved it already, and it would have, like, if distribution's been on a profit rut for 50 years. And ERP hasn't solved that, it likely isn't meant to. It's likely meant to do what it's supposed to do and have a sort of common process and data layer for the company overall. And you need businesses, whether it's ours or others, to actually maximize profit or maximize efficiency over here or whatever. But for us, given our ultimate goal is to make a big difference in distribution, GP is one slice of that big pie. It's a huge pie. It's imperative for us to actually expand outside of GP. So now we're connected to Business Central, F&O, and moving outside of the Microsoft ecosystem as well pretty rapidly. Because again, the goal is to, if we can maximize our addressable market via what systems they're on, that's what we want to do.
Okay. Well, that's brilliant. Yeah. Well, as you say, that's brilliant. And I think it's interesting that we'll see that the companies that do best are those industry-focused organizations, rather than putting a flag to one product. Because again, you're right. The products do a job, but they, like you say, they don't necessarily solve industry issues potentially. Well, like you see, Microsoft makes announcements. If you're a specialist GP partner, suddenly you need to pivot. You need to move to something else. You need different products that you're going to sell and implement, and have specialization in. So
right, yeah. I mean, to that point, I recently learned there was a company that I worked for a business unit many years ago. Their biggest customer was Microsoft. It's a company called Digital River. Many of you may know them. They literally went out of business in the last 6 months or so. They were sold in 2015 for $800 million.
Wow.
And they're out of business now. And
wow.
I think 80% of their business was with Microsoft. That's maybe a dangerous position to be in with any individual customer. But,
yeah. Wow, yeah. That's a pretty stunning statistic. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's then that's exactly what you're doing, and you're great. Well, luckily the distribution industry isn't going to go away, so people are going to need it.
That's an excellent point. I say the same thing. It's like, well, as long as we're using and consuming physical products, distribution is a very durable, resilient space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know technology is moving fast, but I think we're going to still need physical things probably.
Yeah, I think you're safe. Yeah, I think you're safe. Well, also people are buying. There seems to be more and more physical things, isn't there, all the time? So I think it's you just got more data points, more need for technology. It's a more globalized world, so it's you're in a very safe space, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so too. We just, every day we want to just stay ahead. We just want to stay ahead of it,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so tell me, I mean, in regards to then, because I guess you're at the forefront of it. You're talking to distributors. You're asking them what their potential issues are. I mean, what are they thinking are the potential issues for this year, and maybe even further ahead? What are they seeing as potential problems, or is the industry strong at the moment? Where are you seeing the industry in 2025?
Yeah, I think the industry is strong. It's resilient. I think that there's some question marks around, what tariffs could do. We've got some customers that are certainly impacted by tariffs, and they come to us and ask for advice. And can we help sort of capture tariff and pass it along? And how do we change the sort of invoice and how do we pass it along to the end customer? A lot of people are thinking about AI, of course, right? And you have a lot of business leaders that are being sort of asked or mandated by their boards to implement AI in some fashion to modernize, et cetera. So we see a lot of that for sure. We'd like to be part of the answer to that for our customers. And we think that we are for good reason. But the industry as a whole is very steady. And we've had a lot of growth within our customers. I like to think that we're creating statistical outliers with companies that use our software, that we help them become more profitable, competitive, valuable. We have companies, Alex, that approach us and say, I'm thinking about, selling the business in 5 years. There's a lot of family-owned businesses in distribution. And they truly want to maximize profitability, but they don't have the tools to figure out what's really happening. And so we can be quite helpful in that regard. And we're just quite maniacal about trying to measure performance improvement, right? Baseline at day one, how are we driving an improvement over time? We're pretty maniacal about it.
Yeah, and are you going into, is it SMB customers you're going into, or more on the enterprise space? Where are you kind of targeting mainly?
Good question. We can serve anybody really. It's a question of one's willingness to spend for what we offer. But I would say the range is commonly between, I'll say 5 million as a starting point. The average is probably in the 50, 60, but we have customers that are well above $1 billion. We have a few of those customers as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
And the way that I think about it sometimes is that for certain situations, the technology can go toe to toe with even the big players. What we can't do, I spent a number of years at Deloitte, for example, and one of the big projects that we went to chase after, we had 20 people on the project chasing the deal. I can't send 20 Cavallo colleagues, my fellow profit scientists. I can't send 20 of those people into one big deal. So I think the technology is strong enough to serve larger companies. But I do think we need to get really precise about the smaller ones that haven't yet figured out how to get at their data, how to be in command of every line and every order. And it does tend to be oftentimes a smaller business, say 20, 30, 40 million. That's a real sweet spot, I think, for us. But we see the same thing with $250 million companies. It just really depends. And some businesses are investing, they are making investments into business intelligence and data scientists. It's not the norm, it's the exception, but it is happening. And we say good, everybody should be trying to do better. If we can be helpful to you, great. If you're doing the thing already, that's also great. Let's all drive profitability and distribution.
Yeah, that's a great message. I think it's really, I agree. Your technology can clearly do it with, I guess it's different problems potentially to solve. Maybe you're going into some customers and they've got very limited data points. I suppose when you're getting into the billion-dollar companies, hopefully they've got some data points, but maybe you'll compete against, say, I guess at the larger scale, maybe you'll compete against software that already exists, but perhaps isn't performing as well. Whereas I guess maybe the lower end, you're competing against the fact they just haven't got enough data, full stop. Is that about right? Or is that kind of what happens?
I think that's generally right. I think that oftentimes they've got data. They just don't know how to get at it. And it's disparate. It's all over the place. So, back to the AI question a little bit. One of the things that we have found, if you and I were out on the street talking to distributors and we asked 100 of them, do you know how many customers churned last year? They probably wouldn't know. Most of them wouldn't know that. They could get it, but they don't actively know that. And if they don't know that, they don't know how much profit walked out the door with those customers. And so one of the things that we're doing with AI is looking at your customer base and actually using machine learning to assign risk. What's the risk of that customer churning. If it's Alex Inc., what's the risk of Alex churning based on his buying behaviors? That's much better for a machine to do than for humans to do, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll assign a risk category or risk score to you. And that can drive things like, well, who should the sales team be focusing on? If Alex went from a low risk sort of score to a high risk score because he stopped ordering as much, fewer lines, maybe that ought to trigger something for the sales team to contact Alex Inc. and say, hey, here's an offer for that last thing you bought 200 days ago at 15% off. Like just a very simple illustration.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And is that is that a co-pilot thing, or is that what tool do you use for that then? That's sort of analyzing the actual business data, isn't it?
Really good question. The AI that we're using is all proprietary.
Okay, cool.
We would likely not, like in the future, I could see you driving into work and asking our sort of profit companion, hey, tell me the top 10 things I should know today while you're driving into work. And it would tell you that. We will likely not build the sort of Gen AI component of that.
Yeah.
We'll build the underlying technology that actually surfaces those 10 insights that you need to know when you start your day.
Okay, yeah. Well, it might not be driving at all, might they? We might be sitting in the back and asking the question.
There you go. That's even better.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting. And then in terms of distribution, so I get that, and I obviously that for the last 2 years, everyone's spoken about AI, and and what that's going to change. If you say I was a distribution company right now, and you were speaking to me, I said, look, I'm really struggling to make profit. If you had to give me sort of 3 to 5 sort of quick tips about what I might need to do, what would you suggest that I need to kind of understand from my business? What data points are probably most important? You mentioned churn. I guess that's kind of quite high up there. What else would you say I would need to think about quickly, but thoroughly, to sort of quickly improve potentially profitability?
Yeah, I think starting with a baseline, understanding where you're leaking profit, so to speak, right? So one of the things that we thought was important to build was, I can tell you how we can fix your issues, but the first thing is we ought to diagnose whether or not you actually have issues, and then try to figure out what those are. So one of the products that we built for that reason it's called Profit Scan, and you could think of it as detecting profit leaks at scale. And so we can run this in seconds against all of your open orders and quotes, and find orders that are short of the targets that you think that you're making at the line level or at the order level.
Okay.
So I'll take a business like, let's say that you're selling products to multifamily homes, and you've got appliances, fixtures, cleaning supplies, all have different sort of profit profiles, right?
Yeah.
We can take what you believe the target is against those and the order level, and in seconds scan the orders and find out if you've got defects. And if you do, we can also tell you what are the underlying reasons for that. Does that make sense? You can start to understand what's driving it. One of the other products that we built, which looks at your historical data presently, but we can do it on prospective orders as well, is we can tell you to the penny where you're making and losing money for every single customer you sell to, every item you sell, and the reason why. And there's no BI tool that can do that by itself. Like, you need BI tool plus you'd need the personnel and the expertise to actually build that and maintain that. But that would be a great place to start, is like, why don't we understand precisely where you're leaking profit by customer and by item? And you can also go deeper. You can look at it by item class. You can look at it by sales rep. You can look at it by all kinds of different things. But just starting with those 2 things alone, like, it opens your eyes. Like, that's where I'm leaking profit. Super valuable.
Yeah, I'm sold. I bet you have those conversations with owners and founders, and they probably are a bit taken aback, aren't they, in the first meeting? I think. Sometimes
it's that your point you made about 15 minutes ago, which is like, hey, things are fine. Like, I'm making 2.5 cents on the dollar of pre-tax profit, and what's the problem? And then you want to be able to say, well, you're in the 25th percentile for like companies. Now you're mad, right? Now you're upset. Like you thought you were the king of the hill. Like, oh man, I'm like a 25th percentile. You got to prove that to me. But no, it is quite eye opening. We have a lot of meetings where the founder or the owner will look at it. It's like, I can't do that. What you just showed me, I can't do that. And we want to continue to get better at going beyond just providing the insight, but also ultimately actually the system doing things for you. Like that would be the holy grail, right? It's like you had an important item where cost increased. What would the price adjustment need to be, dollar or percent for percent to maintain your gross margin? Can you just execute that?
Yes. Yeah.
That'd be one simple example. Or in the churn example, it's like Alex Inc. became high risk. Send him an automated email immediately, a beautiful email with an offer that he can't refuse to get him back as a customer.
Yeah. I think that's all going to be shown, isn't it? I mean, what's great is I guess you're sitting down. I love the message that you are straight away talking about what all owners care about, which is profit. And you're going, I love that. Straight in the message, we're here to improve your profit. And it's going, because like you said, I suppose if you sit down with someone and say, oh, well, we're 20% profit, you go, well, okay, you're doing quite well. Fair enough. That's quite good. So
maybe it could be better, right? And maybe it could be better. Maybe you're the benchmark, which either way, we'll learn something.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great that you're seeing, then you might sit down with them a year or two later and then you go, well, actually, your pre-tax profit is this. And that's, that is pretty much the only yardstick that any owner really cares about, isn't it? If they're investing in technology, they want to see it turn into increased efficiency and effectively see it on the profit numbers. That's all they want to see. So
yeah, you would think so, right? For-profit businesses should maximize profit. We think it's a good goal.
I think it's a great goal. No, I think it's fantastic. Oh, well, that's brilliant. I mean, for anyone listening, there's quite a lot we discussed there. Actually, we'll put a link to that book that you mentioned, Mike, as well, for anyone who's kind of not read that book that you mentioned as well.
I can send that along to you. It's really pretty short. It's very well written and clean and clear. And he's also a funny author. Like he's actually you want to read about distribution profitability. It sounds super exciting, right? He actually makes it fun.
We'll definitely put a link to that, and we'll put we'll obviously put a link to the website and a bit of information in regards to Cavallo and some of your products as well. Because definitely, I would say watch the promo videos because they are very good for all of the products. Mission Control and the other one that you mentioned as well is really, really good. So I think definitely do that. And it's really exciting times for Cavallo. Moving into potentially different spaces in terms of ERP. Obviously, there's AI to focus on where to invest in, all of that. That's obviously super exciting. But I think ultimately the goal of Cavallo and Mike is to make sure that distributors are making more profit, which is an amazing aim. And there's many success stories and case studies that I'm sure Mike can tell you about. So please do reach out to Mike and the team to find out more about how Cavallo can help. And I always close with one final question, which is a little bit off topic, but we always say if you weren't running a very successful company and you were doing something else and it was your dream job that wasn't necessarily in running a technology company, what would Mike be doing?
Oh, it's a dream job, not like climbing Mount Everest or something like that.
Climbing Mount Everest. Well, climbing Mount Everest is a very good thing to do. I'm not sure, unless you're a Sherpa, I guess you might not get paid regularly for it.
Right, exactly. If it were a job and I didn't need to worry about money, there was a thing I did many years ago in one of my kids' high schools. It's a thing called Challenge. I think it's called Challenge Day, and it was so impactful to go work with these young kids who were going through all kinds of things in their life and like spend a day with your sort of assigned family and really dig into some issues. And you could see the impact it had on these young kids, like these young adults. Wow. And I could do that every day in some capacity. In fact, after this, I probably will do something like that. It was really powerful.
Yeah. Oh, that's super rewarding, isn't it? That's a real, yeah. That's a lovely job. Lovely thing
Right.
to do. Yeah.
But
No,
I
I
like
love
building
that.
things too. So I'm not sure if I'll ever retire, to be honest. We'll see.
Well, you never know. Well, maybe one day we'll all be able to retire at some point, but who knows? Have to see it. Hopefully, we get everyone making loads of money and loads of profit, and then everyone's happy. So
Exactly right.
Oh well, well, it's been lovely, really, really great discussion today. Like I say, I'd encourage any distributors wanting to ask any follow-up questions, reach out to Mike, reach out to the team at Cavallo. They'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. But it's a really important subject. I know Mike's going to be going to a few conferences this year as well. So if anyone's going to, I think you mentioned or Cavallo will have a presence at a few conferences this year, won't they, Mike? So
That's correct. Yeah.
I'm guessing Summit at the end of the year and
Directions, Summit.
Directions. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely reach out to Mike and we'll send those links as discussed. And thank you very much for being on the podcast, Mike.
Alex, thanks for having me. It's been a joy.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye.